Fighter leader and the cicada. While the greatest leaders are built before they are seen. When you look at this picture, most people just see a bug. I see one of nature's greatest leadership lessons. The cicada is not celebrated for its beauty. It does not possess the majesty of the eagle, the strength of the lion, or the commanding presence of the stallion. For most of its life, in fact, it's barely seen at all. Yet hidden within its strange journey is a profound truth about growth, transformation, influence, and leadership. The greatest leaders are often built long before they are seen. Cicada spends most of its existence underground. Depending on the species, it may remain beneath the surface for years, developing quietly, feeding, growing, and preparing for the moment the world cannot yet see. Then, when the time is right, it emerges, it climbs, it sheds the shell that once protected it. It expands its wings and finally, it takes flight. That journey is more than a biological process. It is a living metaphor for leadership. The cicada reminds us that becoming is often invisible before it becomes undeniable. It teaches us that the darkness is not always a grave. Sometimes it's a classroom, and sometimes it's a workshop. Sometimes it's a hidden place where God, experience, adversity, discipline, and time are preparing us for the responsibility of greater influence. We have fallen in love with emergence. We live in a culture captivated by arrival. We celebrate promotions, platforms, titles, followers, stages, victories, invisible success. We see the leader after the transformation and assume the emergence was the beginning of the story. Well, I'm here to tell you it was not. We notice the wings. We rarely consider the years underground. We hear the voice. We do not see the silence that strengthened it. We admire the influence. We overlook adversity, the discipline, sacrifice, correction, disappointment, and private development that made that influence sustainable. The cicada confronts our obsession with immediate visibility. It reminds us that there is no shame in being underground when development is taking place. Some seasons are not designed for recognition. They are designed for roots. Some assignments are not meant to display us. They're meant to develop us. Some struggles are not evidence that we have been forgotten. They are evidence that unfinished work is taking place beneath the surface. One of the greatest mistakes an emerging leader can make is attempting to appear before being adequately prepared. Visibility gained before maturity can become more dangerous than obscurity. A platform does not create character. A title does not create wisdom. Authority does not create discipline. Pressure merely reveals whether those qualities were formed before the moment arrived. The fighter leader understands that leadership does not begin when the spotlight appears. It begins in the darkness, when no one is applauding, watching, or keeping score. Soul is a classroom. The cicada's years beneath the ground are not empty years. They are developmental years. Underground, it is not dead. It is becoming. Leadership also develops beneath the surface. It develops through assignments no one else celebrates. It develops through correction. It develops when our motives are challenged. Our patience is tested and our character is placed under pressure. It develops when we serve without recognition, remain disciplined without supervision, and honor commitments that no one else would know if we abandoned. The hidden season asks difficult questions. Who are you when nobody else is watching? Will you remain or maintain the standard, when there is no reward? Will you continue preparing when the opportunity appears delayed? Will you serve faithfully when someone else receives the recognition? Will you remain teachable after experiencing success? Questions are answered underground. Long before leaders are entrusted with organizations, they must learn to govern themselves. Long before they carry authority, they must learn to carry responsibility. Long before they influence others, they must confront what is influencing them. The soil strips leadership down to its foundation. There are no stages underground. There are no corner offices, no impressive biographies. There is only development. That development may occur in a barracks, classroom, ministry, hospital room, family living room, small business, or difficult season of transition. The location changes, but the lesson remains the same. Preparation is not punishment. The fighter leader does not despise the hidden season. The fighter leader uses it. The climb changes everything. When the cicada finally emerges, its work is not finished. It must climb. It leaves the security of the soil and begins moving upward, often in darkness, searching for a stable place where transformation can continue. The climb is dangerous. It is exposed and vulnerable. The cicada cannot remain underground and still become what it was created to be. At some point, development must become movement. Leaders face the same moment. There comes a time when learning must become action, conviction must become behavior, and potential must become participation. The climb represents the uncomfortable space between who we have been and who we are becoming. It is the decision to accept greater responsibility, the courage to have the difficult conversation. It is the willingness to leave behind familiar patterns. It is the humility to admit that the methods that carried us through one season may not be sufficient for the next. Many people desire greater influence while resisting the growth required to sustain it. But we cannot ask for greater influence without accepting greater growth. We cannot pray for broader responsibility while remaining committed to smaller habits. We cannot lead people towards transformation while refusing to be transformed ourselves. The climb exposes whether our desires is merely to be seen or whether we are truly prepared to become. The shell was never the goal. After climbing, the cicada attaches itself to a stable surface. Its outer shell splits, and the living creature begins the difficult process of pulling itself free. What once protected it must now be abandoned. The shell served a purpose. It provided structure during an earlier stage of development, but eventually, that same shell becomes too restrictive for the life growing inside it. This is one of leadership's most difficult lessons. Something can serve you faithfully in one season and still become a limitation in the next. Old identities become shells. Old habits become shells. Old fears can become shells. Old definitions of success can become shells. Even leadership methods that once produced results can become shells when we cling to them after their usefulness has passed. The problem is not that the shell existed. The problem begins when we mistake the shell for ourselves. The cicada never fights to keep its shell. It leaves it behind. It does not build a monument to what once contained it. It does not crawl back inside because the old form feels familiar. It honors the shell by outgrowing it. Leaders must learn to do the same. Sometimes growth requires us to release the version of ourselves that helped us survive but cannot help us lead the next season. The shell is not the story. The transformation is. And that is the heart of the fighter leader. New wine requires new wineskins. Yeshua, most popularly known as Jesus, taught, and no one pours new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the new wine will burst the skins. The wine will run out, and the wineskins will be ruined. Luke chapter 5, verses 37 and 38. New wine requires new wineskins. Greater influence requires greater growth. A new season cannot always be carried by an old structure. We often ask God for new opportunities while attempting to preserve old patterns. We ask for expansion without transformation, promotion without preparation, influence without accountability, and new wine without new wineskins. But genuine growth stretches us. It challenges our assumptions and exposes weaknesses that comfort allows us to ignore. It requires us to develop the emotional, spiritual, intellectual, and relational capacity to carry what comes next. The cicada could never take flight while remaining sealed inside the shell that once protected it. Neither can we. The old wineskin is not necessarily evil. The shell is not an enemy. Both may have served a necessary purpose. But wisdom recognizes when yesterday's protection becomes today's restriction. The fighter leader honors the past without becoming imprisoned by it. We carry the lesson, we release the limitation, and we continue becoming. The loudest part of the cicada is not its wings. The cicada's presence is often known by its sound. Its call can travel through the trees and dominate the atmosphere around it. Yet that voice did not begin when the sound became audible. It was being formed during the hidden years. Leadership works the same way. A leader's voice is more than volume. It is the accumulated weight of experience, discipline, service, sacrifice, consistency, and truth. Anyone can become loud. Not everyone becomes credible. A voice without character creates noise. A voice shaped by experience creates influence. The fighter leader does not speak merely to attract attention. The fighter leader speaks because preparation, responsibility, and service have given the message substance. That voice may be expressed through words, but it is first communicated through example. People hear what leaders say. They study what leaders do. They watch how we respond when challenged, how we treat those who cannot advance our careers, how we accept correction, and where we place responsibility when something goes wrong. Our lives are always speaking. The question is whether our conduct supports our message. Leadership is not becoming someone else. The cicada does not emerge from its shell as another creature. It emerges as the fullest expression of what it was becoming all along. Leadership development is not about manufacturing false identity. It is about removing limitations, fears, habits, and insecurities that keep our most disciplined and purposeful self from emerging. Authentic leadership is not a performance. It is alignment. It's alignment of character and conduct, belief and behavior, values and decisions, words and example. Many people exhaust themselves trying to imitate the style of successful leaders while ignoring the deeper work of discovering who they were called to become. The world does not need another copy. It needs leaders whose lives have been tested, refined, and integrated. The fighter leader does not become someone else to gain influence. The fighter leader becomes more accountable for who they already are and more intentional about who they are becoming. Greatest battle is internal. Before a leader can model the standard, take the hit, or pass the praise, that leader must win the internal battle, the battle against ego, the battle against insecurity, the battle against comfort, the battle against the need to be recognized, the battle against the temptation to protect an outdated version of oneself. This is why transformation can feel so violent. The old identity does not always surrender quietly. The shell resists. Fear whispers that familiar is safer. Ego warns that growth exposes weakness. Pride convinces us that admitting the need to change will make us appear incapable. But the opposite is true. The courage to grow is evidence of strength. The humility to change is evidence of maturity. The willingness to leave the shell is evidence that the life within us has become greater than the structure surrounding us. The fighter leader recognizes that leadership is not merely about overcoming external obstacles. It's about mastering the internal forces that prevent us from serving others well. Leadership is participation for transformation. The fighter leader concept rests upon three enduring principles. 1. Model the standard. Do not merely announce what excellent looks like, demonstrate it. Let people see discipline, integrity, humility, courage, preparation, and service operating through your example. Leadership becomes credible when the standard is visible in the leader before it's demanded from the team. 2. Take the hit. Accept responsibility. Provide top cover for people who are acting ethically, morally, and faithfully. Do not allow accountability to roll downhill while authority remains protected at the top. Correct what must be corrected, but never sacrifice people merely to preserve your image. 3. Pass the praise. Recognize the people who carried the mission. Do not consume the credit that belongs to the team. Let recognition travel towards the people whose labor, courage, creativity, and commitment made the success possible. These principles demand transformation. You cannot model the standard while remaining committed to appearances. You can't take the hit while protecting your ego. And you cannot pass the praise while needing to occupy the center of every victory. The shell must break. Something smaller must be released so that something greater can emerge. This is why leadership is participation for transformation. We enter the work, we share the burden, we accept the responsibility, we elevate others, and through that process, the organization changes because the people within it are changing. Do not spend your life polishing yesterday's shell. Eventually, the cicada flies away. The empty shell remains attached to the tree, not because life ended, but because life outgrew it. It remains as evidence that something transformed. My challenge to you is simple. Do not spend your life polishing yesterday's shell. Do not confuse familiarity with destiny. Do not remain imprisoned by an identity, a habit, a fear, a title, a method, or a season you were created to outgrow. Spend your life becoming the leader your next season requires. Grow when no one is watching. Remain faithful during the underground years. Climb when development demands movement. Release what can no longer carry you further into your future. Expand your wings before attempting to fly. Use your voice to strengthen others rather than merely drawing attention to yourself. Model the standard, take the hit, and pass the praise. Because the legacy is not measured by titles, positions, applause, or visibility. It is measured by the lives that grew because we were present. It is measured by the leaders and the people who became stronger because we stood beside them. It is measured by the leaders who found their wings because our example gave them permission to leave their shells behind. Most people see a bug. I see evidence that hidden development was never wasted. I see proof that darkness can become a classroom. I see a reminder that the shell was never the destination. I see the fighter leader concept. And now the question becomes, what shell are you still wearing that you were never meant to lead in? Thank you. For more information, keynotes, workshops, or presentations on the fighter leader concept, please contact Sergeant Major Robert L. Lytle at lytle.leadership@gmail.com.